We're a Canadian, let's call it a community-based political outlet. Okay. We do shows every week now. We're going to start to do shows every week. So we're going to have a show on Monday that's all about Indigenous matters, which is going to be led by Treaty Birder. I am going to do a news hour every Tuesday where I'm just going to be talking to the camera, catching people up on the news, interacting with the comments for about an hour just to get people caught up on what's going on. On Wednesday, we're going to have Generation Next, which is going to be a show that's really going to be trying to think about how the youth is dealing with all of this, how the youth can get more involved, issues pertaining to that, how they grew up in the younger generation, what they're consuming for information, etc. And then Thursday, we're going to have this. So it's our panel where we pick a bunch of topics, but we have open discussions around them. And they're always going to be relating to, the most recent news of the week. I'm sorry for that noise. I live on a busy street. And then Friday, we're going to have Debate Central, where we're going to actually take some opposition, but, only the respectful opposition, and just try to have a conversation about what's happening in our country, what's happening around the world, and see if we can maybe connect.
I love that. Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
there has to be connection and engagement, or this isn't going to go well for anybody.
100%. So I'm going to ask everybody to try to mute your microphones when we're not speaking. And then, sorry, I've got a so sorry. And just try to be respectful, make eye contact with each other, so that we are not interrupting each other as much. I think that's the best we can do when we're so passionate at this point. And if I will just move through from here. So who wants to start with the liberal shift?
I think Frontline should head this one right off the bat. I think what she wanted to talk about, I think it needs to be brought to light to more. And I think it needs to be a front and center topic. So, Frontline, if you want to run with this one, I really want you to give us what you got for information on that.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the liberal shift itself, because I think a lot of us have been hearing recently that, there's some liberal MPs that have basically said that, like, Justin Trudeau took the party too far to the left. We need to bring it back to center. And that's worrying for a lot of liberal voters that are definitely more connected to policies that would be more left leaning, right? The people that we've seen make an official announcement to lead so far, we don't really know too much about Frank, but Andrea put up a 4-page letter on X talking about what he would do as the leader of the Liberal Party. And some of the stuff in there seemed like it was definitely moving more to the right. So that's kind of how we started this conversation. It is on Tuesday in the news show, I talked about what those things were. So one of the things that he mentioned was that he wants to make Canada a republic and pull us away from UK and the Commonwealth, which was very odd. There was a lot of very conservative thoughts mixed in with some leftist thoughts, and it definitely seemed like it was trying to bring the party back to the center. But there hasn't really been too much news covering this guy. There hasn't been really too much talk on it, but we just know that he is officially one of the, runner-ups, I guess, for the Liberals. However, I think all of us know that recently can you guys still hear me? Let me know if you can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. The sound all of a sudden changed. Okay, so we obviously have been hearing a lot of talk about Mark Carney being the potential leader, right? We saw him on The Daily Show. He made it pretty obvious that he's going to be in this leadership race. And obviously that got people talking about it, thinking about it. And so I've just started recently learning about him. But what I'm seeing, I have to be brutally honest, I'm on board with. I think he would make a good liberal leader, and I think he could pull off at least a lot more support for the Liberals again, right? He doesn't actually have ties to the Trudeau government. He's worked with Harper. He's gotten us out of our recession. He's worked in the UK to help the UK when they went through Brexit. Like he's got a quite stacked, requirements for the job. And he's also actually quite progressive, right? Like this is a guy that actually wants UBI and has talked about wanting to bring universal basic income. He acknowledges the fact that AI is going to take our jobs and we need to secure a roof over our head and food, which is amazing. Like I haven't heard any of the other leaders talk about this yet. So he's got a good chance. Now, conservatives, this is where the topic comes in for today. What's been brought to light in the last 24 to 48 hours is that conservatives know he's a threat. They very much know he's a threat. He knows a lot about the Conservative Party. And they don't like that. They really don't like that. So they've come up with a strategy to make that not happen. A lot of them are organizing together in different groups online. I'm not going to mention which platforms, but multiple platforms. And they're starting to acquire liberal memberships so they can vote for the weakest candidate of the Liberal Party to be the leader so that they can be crushed in the elections. And this is a real thing. We've looked into it. There's some journalists that already know about this. But it's happening. So there's a lot of conservative commentators that have already seen say that they acquired liberal memberships and they're going to vote for the worst candidate. Now, if that's not worrying, I don't know what is, because that's election interference. And so we need to do something. We need to talk to our MPs. We need to email them. We need to talk to reporters and journalists and have people do some more digging into this. Because there's technically nothing illegal, right? Because anybody can get a liberal membership. So this needs to just be looked at.
Yeah, and the trouble with this is you run into the legal technicalities of what they're doing because on a legal level, it's hard to see where you're breaking the law. However, the intent and purpose of what you're doing is to uh, basically discredit an election. Um, don't know where I don't know where you go with that, but I absolutely agree with your front line that this is something that we need to be talking about. That's why I wanted you to kind of bring it right front and center right at the start of the show because uh, this election interference stuff it's becoming part of our system, and if you're looking at dismantling democracy, causing doubt in elections is the best damn way to do it.
It's the way it's been done in other countries many times.
Well, we have to start looking around the world and seeing the examples of what is actually happening, and that's why one of my front and center questions with a lot of conservatives is can you point to me any country in the world that has the type of system you're after that people are doing well, and you just can't.
But they don't get it. They don't get it because they just don't have that education of how the rest of the world works. And history, right? Like we're all missing. Like, I've studied a lot of history and I still feel like I've just barely scratched the surface with how much there is to learn. Um, and I swear, like that's kind of what's shaped my political views and ideology in my life is understanding what has happened in human history, and that's one of the big things that I think we need to educate on, and we need to have way more of a focus on history in school. But I mean, we've had history manipulated now in schools, right? Think about how many states in America pulled history right out of the history book so that kids wouldn't learn.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
we even know that Christianity itself pulled history out of the history books.
Well,
So,
we don't even have to go as far as America. We'll talk about it on another occasion, but Miss Radical has a beautiful example of that, whitewashing the history, if I may be so bold, here in Alberta. And it's part of the system in Alberta. I spent enough time in Alberta to realize that so much of what is happening there is inherent in the system. The first time I heard about critical race theory was out on the rigs.
Yeah, so the conversation goes a little bit like I was in a classroom in Alberta, and we teach social studies in that classroom, and we were teaching Indigenous studies. And as my job was to be an educational assistant, so I don't have a chance to read or plan for it. I just get the material handed to me about a minute before I start teaching, right? So I walk in and the teacher says, here, take this and go read this to the students. We sit down, we open up the textbook together, the students and I, and to the chapter, and it's a picture of the missionaries running through the hills with Indigenous children. And it's so beautifully set, like so like they were happy, they were playing. It was wonderful. And they wanted me to read that to some Indigenous children. That's a hard thing to do when they're educated and I'm becoming educated. You know what I mean? And the best part of that moment I can tell you is a young man sitting beside me said to me, "That's bullshit," in grade 3. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they definitely did a lot of, as Mr. Radical said, they're whitewashing history, especially when it came to that particular subject. And
Well, you can't. The trouble, and again, and it goes back to the banning of this app, is us even talking about this type of information with Indigenous peoples here and bringing it to the front and center. That is what they fear. Like I said, there's a reason that both Democrats and Republicans want to get rid of this app.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Now, getting back to, I just want to, for people new to the show, I wanted to thank you for coming in. We are Beaver Politics. We are an informal platform for discussing modern problems and an intelligent and responsible and ethical way. So if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome aboard and thanks for being here. But we wanted to get back to what Frontline was talking about here, I think this constant interference in our elections, because we're now dealing with a twofold problem here in Canada. The elections are being interfered with, and the massive voter apathy that tends to happen here in Canada, Ontario being unfortunately a horribly front and center example of that.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I have to be brutally honest with you guys when I tell you that I know so many people, like, in my local community that do not vote. They don't watch the news. They don't want to participate in what is going on outside of their own little bubble. And sometimes I don't blame them, because we were talking about this earlier about like how our brains handle this much stress, this much information. People are so burnt out from information overload, and especially once misinformation came in, they don't even know what to believe anymore. So they're like, nope, I'm not even paying attention to the news. I don't even know what to believe. All I know that I can believe is what's right in front of me, what's happening in my day-to-day life, because that's the only thing I have actual factual evidence for. And so they've kind of just tuned out of anything that's happening worldwide, that's happening within politics. They're just there to try to be happy day to day.
I have a
And so I think that's
question.
a big part of what causes the apathy.
I have a question from Canadian Bacon, and he says, when are they going to answer? Like, why won't Trudeau drop any names? When is the inquiry coming? When are we going to hear the rest of this juicy story about the inquiry and foreign interference?
The report's supposed to come out at the end of January.
Okay. I hope that answers you, Canadian Bacon.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the whole political attack about Justin Trudeau not releasing names, you can't. The police has to come to him and go, hey, you need to know this because you're running the damn country. But beyond that, this is an independent investigation. Trudeau really has nothing to do with it beyond the scope of them informing him. You need to know this for the betterment of the country. This has been a political attack right from essentially the get go. But this ability to give out information as to who, what, when, and where, it can't happen.
Anytime there's an investigation, you're not allowed to speak until the investigation is over. I think everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that, but it's being played.
And I think
Everything
it's
is being played.
Yeah, and
If,
I think it's a huge
if
safety
one,
issue too. That's why they have to keep the investigation quiet, right? You're gonna mess up with the intelligence, and maybe those
yeah, you
MPs
can
that are compromised and don't know, right? It could get them into a sticky situation. So yeah, that's why tight lip until it's actually done.
um,
So I just want to address this one question quick. Canadian Bacon 99. He says he can release the names. It's one of the perks of being prime minister. Why would you give people that have it out for you more information about what you know? It just does not make sense on even a fundamental level. If you are building up knowledge to bring somebody to the table, you're going to accumulate that knowledge until you can move forward with it. There's no way that Trudeau can simply throw this information out. It's nonsensical, and I won't address it again.
I don't know that he's being facetious. I just think he's probably frustrated like everyone else. Excuse me.
uh, you know,
Well,
if
go ahead.
anytime you speak before an investigation is over, you can jeopardize the investigation. Yeah, you could jeopardize the outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't give people that you're investigating what you know. There is no investigation in any court that's ever done that where you go to the side that you're investigating and you go, hey, here's all the information we have on it.
Mm.
Right.
It's 6:18, Miss Radical. What was the next subject that we were going to touch on here today?
Frontline, were we going to touch on the fires?
We were going to touch on the fires and how they were used as political manipulation by the GOP
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
and Elon. I mean, I guess we can call him part of the GOP now.
I hear he's moving into the White House with Trump.
Are you serious?
I
I
did
thought he
hear
was
that.
already living at Mar-a-Lardo.
Yeah, so I mean, I think a lot of us know that, the fires were basically blamed on DEI. What does that mean? Well, they were blamed on the fact that the police and the fire department has women in charge.
Yep.
And that created chaos and so many fights between people. I am so sorry. I'm going to let Radical talk for a second because okay, they're gone by. Sorry, ambulances and fire trucks, the perks of living in a city.
Inner city.
But anyway, so, I'm just going to say that, like, I was watching these fires live. The first night that they were roaring, I stayed up till 6 a.m. and I was watching live footage. And when you watch live footage, people comment, right? Just like they do here. And half those comments were horrendous. Horrendous. They were literally trying to say that this wasn't happening. This isn't real. This is all a scam. I mean, every single conspiracy you can imagine, I saw in the comments. And then, the very next day, I started reading all the news that were coming out that showed, X posts from all of these Republican leaders literally blaming the government and saying things like, this isn't climate change. This is just Democrats. I mean, to politicize, to take things out of context, to blame it on DEI is dangerous.
Yeah.
Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous for the future of this planet, for the future of humanity, for democracy. Like, I can't believe that this is our reality. I genuinely feel like I'm watching a dystopian horror film every time I see this happening.
Mhm.
You know, and the conspiracy theories, you know, the chubby Cheeto there that's going to be running America is normalizing conspiracy theories every day. I mean, it's 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 hard to, you know, reel people back to reality when you got someone there that is running the country that is so out of touch with reality.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I was going to say, I wanted to just touch on something quick because somebody brought it up in the comments, and there's so much to these fires that I haven't even mentioned. But yes, so obviously the governor now is being, ostracized, and the Republicans are trying to say that they will not send aid to California unless he steps down. Like, they're trying to get rid of him. Why? Because they want to put loyalists in every state of America. So they're going to use any crisis, anything that happens, they're going to use it for political manipulation. That's what the 4 years of the Trump presidency is going to look like.
well, one of the things that the left doesn't really understand that the right has understood now for about the last 20 to 25 years is whenever you work in a hierarchical system, yes, the commands flow from the top. However, if nothing underneath it works the way that it's supposed to, it doesn't matter what comes from the top. And that's why there was such a push to manipulate the courts, to gerrymander districts, to do all of these different things, because they understood that if they put enough wrenches in the works, the whole system would fall apart. And that's where we're seeing right now is kind of the end result of all of that. And as Frontline highlighted here, this is all part of the strategy to implement in every state. Once they get these people into power, it doesn't matter. Every rule that we currently follow will be in the garbage.
Yeah. And, Art said it in the comments. He's like, do you really think he's going to leave? Not if he gets his way.
No,
He already said he has no intention of leaving, right? He said you would never have to vote again if you vote for me.
yep,
Believe it. When he says it, it's like the tariffs. Oh, I shouldn't say anything. Sorry. Mel Gibson just got a spot, did he not, in the Trump cabinet?
yep,
Radical.
yeah. Now, I don't have absolute confirmation of
Okay,
that
don't.
right
Then
now.
we're
But
waiting to hear
yeah,
confirmation. We don't know
yeah,
that for
we'll
sure.
we'll leave that one aside for right now.
We'll say
Yeah, I still don't
allegedly.
understand why. Sorry, say that again.
Sorry, I just said allegedly. Mel Gibson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah. Um, all I've now I've my train of thought is gone. It'll come back. It'll come back. I think all I was trying to get at is, we really need to take this man at his word. I don't know why people keep saying everything. Oh, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. No, it's not. He's done what he says he's going to do most of the time.
Yeah.
I don't know why people don't believe that. He showed that in his last term. Like, what happened? Why did everybody forget about those 4 years? I don't get it. But COVID, right? COVID. That's what it was. COVID was, the perfect manipulation strategy. Take a crisis, turn it into manipulation, get your way, keep gaining power. It's been used in history many, many, many times.
Yeah, absolutely it has. And one of the things that we have to realize is with these attacks on Gavin Newsom, establishing what the hierarchy kind of looks like again, where it's a top down thing. What they want to do is get Trump at the top where the bottom up is now managing him. Now, whether or not that's successful, much like the Mustachio Man in the 30s, he was enabled into power by people of influence and money in Germany. Once they got him in there, they realized they had created a monster, but no longer had the ability to change or do anything about it. And that, I think, is part of the war that we're seeing with Trump. because yes, they need to install all of these people in power, but not all of them are completely for what Trump's doing because they realize the ramifications of what putting a sociopath in the White House on.
Yep. Don't forget, we got Musk now too, who's another sociopath, working together.
Well, I mean, I've mentioned it before that we have to look at what's happening from more of a military perspective. And one of the first things that you do as a military is you get your opposition to lose focus and concentrate on anything other than you. And so much of what we're seeing, all this garbage that Trump is throwing out there, well, yes, he intends to go with it. It's also intended to cause chaos among everybody. Nobody's talking about that their general quality of life is going to go down starting pretty much on the 20th. Oh, I think I've lost everybody's sound here.
No,
Oh,
I was just, I muted myself so I could tap, tap, tap. Make sure you tap, 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 everybody.
yeah. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I was agreeing with you.
what we're one of the other things I wanted to mention is that oil companies have known since the 70s that their own climate data mirrored exactly what everybody else has been saying. And they hid that knowledge for decades. They understand that they're pushing the climate to its limits and what the repercussions are. But they also now have enough political influence and enough money floating around that they can direct us to channel our energies anywhere other than where the actual problems for the fire in LA are.
Yep. And it's all been documented. This started back in 1959 at the first conference where the giant fossil fuel CEOs found out that if they keep going down this path, they will destroy the planet. And they knew it. And they actually, in the beginning, they were kind of more positive about it. You know, they were like, oh, we should try different energies. And they did their own studies and they confirmed their own selves that this is what was going to happen. And then they got greedy. And then they started burying all of that information and creating conspiracies for climate change denial so they could keep making big, big bucks in the background while nobody paid attention anymore. And people started blaming weather events on everything but them.
Yeah.
Intended and executed almost perfectly. And that's the end result where we can see the effects of it happening right before our eyes, and yet people will still excuse it away. Well, it's natural cycles and it's this, that, and the other thing. Natural cycles do occur, but if you're already headed downhill and then you take your foot off the brakes, what's going to happen?
Just to one of the comments, I just want to answer to it because Art said, remember, like you can always not buy oil and gas. Yes, but it's obviously so interwoven into everything we use, into everything we do. Of course, we can try making better decisions ourselves, but we are kind of trapped. Like, who here has ever watched that show called The Good Place? You guys know The Good Place?
Yeah.
Okay, right? So we're all in the bad place. And we're like, even us using these phones right now, that's putting us in the bad place, right? Because no matter what, we're contributing because this it's become so interwoven in our everyday lives, right? So we need the people at the top to be making the changes. We need the people at the top to really start cracking down on this, because if we just leave it up to the people, it'll never change, especially because so many people live in their own bubbles, right? Like me and so many other people have been trying to boycott certain CEOs and companies for years. and it's gone nowhere. Like, we've maybe made a small little dent, but it's not really going to go anywhere until policies get in place to actually stop these companies from doing what they're doing. We as the people do have power, but in order for all of us to have power, we all need to be on the same page. And look at us right now. Like, realistically, we are the most divided we have ever been. So to me, getting all of us on the same page, it's either going to take like massive disaster and massive parts of the population being unalived, either by wars or climate change or something like that gets people to wake up. But outside of that, we need to strive to not let these things happen in the countries that we're living in, because I still want to remind people, we're still not America. Europe is still not America. We still have a chance here to not go down the same road. And it's going to be terrible because the biggest military on the entire planet is now going to be owned by the GOP, which is very scary. But I think that, the more important thing, rather than trying to unite everybody, because that's impossible right now, is to try to unite enough people in order to stop this from happening in our country.
The oil executives. I'm reminded of a rally or a protest that was held outside of Enbridge head offices in Edmonton. The higher ups came down to the street level and stood there with their sunglasses on, and were telling people to go jump off a cliff. They hate any time you speak out against ONG, and there are
Yep.
always going to be people like that, and they hate the fact that we're trying to, you know, not abruptly move towards greener energy, but, transition to greener energy. They cannot stand people like that. They want them to unalive. They want them to, they think of the nastiest things to say. And I've seen them do it personally. It's disgusting. It,
Oh,
it,
you don't have to go any further than Greta Thunberg.
that's right. But they've got a serious wake up call coming, when that decision is handed down with the Beaver Lake court case. And they're all running scared because of it. Because the Blueberry case set a precedence, and Ontario has a precedent set. And those two things are being used in this court case. Um, and Danielle Smith has nothing. The province has nothing. They're named in that lawsuit, as well as the federal government. And the federal government has, under Trudeau, has said, hey, we messed up. We're willing to come to the table with you guys. And Danielle Smith, with her, oil executives whispering in her ear, is sitting there going, nope, 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 nope. You know, she would rather go down in flames than, try to negotiate.
Well, we got to realize that whether it's the Republicans down south or whether it's the Republicans up north here, the conservative branch of our government is simply the political arm of the business community. I hope you're catching sound here. I just lost my sound, so I hope I'm going through. But I keep mentioning it and I keep talking about it that like the conservative platform, the entire Republican platform, is a religious money-based platform. The church is happy to push the Republicans so they don't have to pay taxes. The business community is happy to push the Republicans so they don't have to pay taxes. At the end of the day, how much further do you have to look than those things? And it keeps coming back to simple math, but the simple math isn't mathing because of the size and complexity of the political propaganda that is hitting people. Most people simply don't understand how these platforms work, where this information comes from, nor do they want to, nor do they care. And that's actually the more frightening part about it. For a lot of us, we're going to want to discern our information and figure out, is this correct or not? For a large part of our population, that's not part of their information dissemination process. If it confirms to their personal biases and it makes them feel all warm and fuzzy all over, that's what they're going to run with.
Yep.
I think too. Oh,
There's
sorry.
Miss
It,
Ron.
in Alberta, there is a lot. I know older gentlemen that get all their news from like True North and God, I'm trying to think of all the names of all of them, like Alberta Strong and Free, right? Like
Yep.
all these huge propaganda machines, and they take it as that's news. That is what it is, and they believe it, and they're smart men too. But yeah, it's a problem.
And that's part of what Beaver politics is looking out to do is we have to meet on the same level that they're at. There's a reason that they put so much money into the Candace Owens and the Ben Shitpirons and that Benny fucker and Matt Walsh and all of these fucking weirdos is because it's simply about repetition, repeating that same message. If you repeat it often enough, people will start to believe it, whether it's true or not. They're using brain science and social media platforms against the average person that doesn't have the ability to discern what information is coming at them.
100%. Repetition has been a key manipulation tactics since we started understanding basic psychology.
Yep.
And just look at their propaganda, right? Like when Pierre Polyev made the wackos video, right? How many times was that word repeated in that 11-minute film? How many times? He repeated it like every 30 seconds or so. It was just constant, right? And then you look at how many times did Trump repeat that word? You put his rallies back to back and you see him use that word. It's just over and over and over and over again. That's what they do. And it's mind-blowing to me. It's literally mind-boggling that people don't stop and go, "Hey, this guy has used this word 60 times.
Well,
There's probably a reason for this. Why is he repeating himself? That doesn't even sound intelligent. You just repeat. Like, to me, it doesn't sound intelligent when somebody repeats themselves over and over. I'm like, you've lost me.
but here's the thing though. It takes 3 days to form a habit and 21 days to break it, right? So they got 3 days. 3 days to
Yep.
come up and get everybody interested in their ideas. And then it takes 21 days for us to undo this shit. And then it takes 3 more days, and then it takes 21 more. So we're going back and forth like a seesaw. We're not making it. We're making a little bit of headway. I have a funny story. A creator on here that I were talking about Paul Yeb, and she's liberal, but she doesn't like Trudeau, so she's not going to vote Trudeau. She's voting liberal, and I was like, okay, cool, bet. Like I don't care where you're voting, but you're voting against your best interest if you're voting for the right at this point in time. And then a couple Fridays ago, she messaged me, or she came onto my live, and she goes, "I'm sorry." I'm like, "What? Do you come up here to apologize, but for what?" And she literally sat there and said, "I am so sorry. I didn't see it." I'm like, "See, like I'm at this point. I'm up for like 12 hours, no sleep, no nothing. I'm like, my mind is going, okay, you didn't see what? You didn't see that you requested, or like we've had conversations." She goes, "I didn't see the racism in Canada. I finally opened my eyes. And I know now what you're talking about. I don't know how you feel when it happens, but she actually sees it with her eyes. And she's like, that it disgusts me how many people don't actually see it. And she's like, I've seen so many people talk about this person and that person and this person and that person of this race and that race. But I never put two and two together. I said, it's because you don't face it. You're not affected by it. You can walk away at any point. I unfortunately cannot. It's something I'm going to face every day of my life. And she goes, well, I can tell you right now, I ain't voting Pierre. I'm like, hey, I applaud you, but at this point in time, I can't trust that you're actually not going to vote for him. Because you said some things that are hurtful, but you don't realize what you're saying is hurtful. And now you finally see what I'm telling you, but you're not actually there yet. Like, you're there, but you're not fully there. And it broke my heart.
Yep.
Marsh, I had an experience with a good friend of mine where she came to visit us, and we love her so much. And we were walking down the street during COVID, and somehow in this conversation, she swung her arms up in the air and she told me, like, look at the land that we gave the indigenous people. Like, look at the buildings and look at the malls we created. And you know, she was going on about all of these amazing things that she thought that we had done. And I kind of looked at her and I said, I love you so much. And I really just need you to do a little bit of research because you're not hearing what I'm seeing on the backs of kids. And I said, you love kids as much as I do. So you got to check this out. And Radical and I were beside ourselves to hear her say that. But I do have to give her enough grace to say a year later, they came back. And when I say they, I mean her and her husband. And they said that they had no idea and they were so embarrassed and sad that they didn't know that and that that was the conversation that they had had.
Yeah, and unfortunately, too many people are in the same boat as her, where the education has just completely and utterly failed. And not only has the education failed, but the truth was actively and financially suppressed in every way, shape, or form. I mean, let's be honest about the reality of things. Some of the people, some of the nuns and nurses that were committing, as far as what I'm concerned, are out and out crimes. They're still
War
around.
crimes against people, yeah.
They're still around.
Let's let Smarshy finish her thought here.
Yesterday I was on a live and I was trying to explain to this person who was trying to convince these other people that colonization was a good thing. And I said, you know, you sit here and you talk about colonization being a good thing, but if it weren't for my people, where would you be? Your ancestors wouldn't have made it. He goes, oh, you must be one of those Indian things.
Yep, lack of education, but like I said, the lack of education had absolute purpose, malice, and intent behind it.
And no compassion, no intelligent thought. Just, oh, I'm going to call you this name because that's what you are, and that's what I see you as.
I kind of call them gaslighters. That's my reference to them.
Well, I kind of got mad at him, and the host let me, and I was like, well, you know, we taught you how to fish, hunt, and clean yourself, but apparently you guys don't know how to wash your ass still, so I don't know where the ball dropped.
That's awful. I'm sorry you had that experience.
But that's my everyday experience.
Yeah.
Well, we're pushing on quarter two here, and I think we'll want to swing. First of all, for people that are just tuning into the show, welcome to Beaver Politics. I think we need to bring it around probably to the most important topic of at least the last 12 damn hours. Trump has now absolutely confirmed that, yes, tariffs are coming in. What is it going to look like for the average Canadian? What is going to look like for the average American? At this point here, we all know that costs are going to go up and they're probably going to go up drastically. So now the question becomes is how do we deal with the repercussions of what's about to happen?
Ooh, great questions. Anybody? I have a question though. So things are gonna get high really fast. What things can we expect to go high quickly?
I would anything that comes on a boat. Essentially, that's the first damn thing that'll get hit. So if any of the components of what you're buying or the item itself is coming on a boat or crossing the Canada-US border now,
Yeah.
it's going to go up. So that runs about probably 95% of what's in the average store.
So I heard, and I was watching a news show, and it was talking about the blanket tariffs that Trump wants to enforce on Canada and Mexico. And someone had said that Canada's prepared to not do any trading with the U.S. How is that going to look for Canada?
Well, the same damn way it's going to look for America. It's not. It's not going to. The only place that it will serve a purpose is with the rich. We've got to understand that for the rich, they view things like recessions and economic problems as something to actually be embraced because every recession, they're not worried about paying their bills. But what they sure as hell can do is walk into a company that's now struggling and buy it for pennies on the dollar. This is the same thing with the tariffs. It will make the rich even richer at the expense of everybody else, and a good chunk of America voted it in.
That scares me.
Frontline, I'd love to hear your
Can I?
opinion.
I was gonna say I have an expert analysis here from some top economists as to what they're saying about these tariffs and the implications for Canada, and I was wondering if you guys want me to read some of these out.
Yep.
Absolutely, yep.
So, what are the economic implications for Canada if a 25% tariff in the US takes place? Well, the numbers are stark. A 10% tariff scenario would trigger an estimated 2.4 percentage point contraction in the Canadian GDP over 2 years, putting approximately 500,000 jobs across various sectors at risk. The US would face a 1% a 1 percentage point GDP reduction and a 3.5 trillion to 4 trillion deficit increase. More alarming is the 25% scenario, which could triple the job losses to 1.5 million positions for Canada, also causing severe supply chain disruptions, permanent structural changes, and a GDP contraction significantly exceeding 2.4%. This would require aggressive monetary policy intervention, which will in turn put higher inflation on Canadians. Which industries are most vulnerable to the tariffs' impact? Industries heavily reliant on cross-border supply chains would be hit the hardest. The automotive sector, especially with 20% of its inputs sourced across borders, faces significant cost increases and disruptions. The energy sector, chemical and plastic manufacturing, forestry products, and machinery sectors are also highly vulnerable. Would imposing this tariff comply with the rules of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the USMCA? No, the imposition of a sweeping 25% tariffs would likely violate these provisions, which are designed to ensure free trade among member countries. Any unilateral tariff would require justification under narrow exceptions, such as national security, which would likely force legal challenges from Canada and Mexico. However, with the 2026 fast approaching, it's possible Trump will issue a threat that if no charges are made beforehand, a new deal will be off the table in 2026, effectively canceling the USMCA. How might the tariff affect Canadian consumers? Canadian consumers would face substantial challenges. Prices on a wide range of goods would likely to be raised significantly. For example, a loaf of bread currently priced at $3.50 could rise to $5 due to increased costs for imported processed agricultural inputs. These steep and sweeping price hikes will strain household budgets and increase debt levels. Energy costs would also see an increase, which will only compound financial pressures. Disruptions in supply chains and markets exist could not only leave Canadians with fewer options in various categories, but could also limit access to essential products like prescription medications or household goods reliant on U.S. components. Will the tariff bring tangible benefits to American consumers? The tariff is unlikely to be significant for American consumers. Instead, it would lead to higher prices for goods reliant on Canadian imports, such as lumber for construction and automotive parts, increasing the cost of housing and vehicles. Reduced competition might also further exacerbate price inflation in certain categories. So the other part of this, so I don't go on forever, would be like what strategies can Canadian businesses adopt now to shield themselves from the effects of the tariff? And that's what the rest of the article is about. If you guys want me to get into that, it's totally up to you.
Well, let's break down. Basically, what it amounts to is it's going to be a shit show for everybody.
Yeah.
That's really the bottom line of this. Damn near everything that you go and buy tomorrow is going to be more expensive. We're already at that reality, so I think now we have to go back and look at a lot of things that happened in the 1920s, how people conducted themselves, how they divvied out their food. We're going to have natural catastrophes. We now have a tariff system. We're in a trade war. It's going to get ugly for a lot of people as far as meeting just their basic needs.
Yep. I started buying stuff online on Amazon. I mean, I know it's an oligarchy, but I'm buying stuff in the by the cases because unfortunately, this is what I have to do for my family to survive. Because the next couple of years, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Also, just quickly, somebody in the chat asked me what's the name of this article. If you search up Expert Explainer, Trump's 25% tariff threat by Western News, you should get to this. I tried to type it in the chat, but it's like impossible for me to do that and this at the same time.
Thank you.
I just want to answer pumpkin spice latte. Are the economists talking about the repercussions of cutting exports to the States? I think what we need to understand is that all of these different factors are going to be in play. Cutting exports, whatever it happens to be, but this is going to be an economic shit show. However, it turns out the micromanagement of it at this point for us as everyday consumers doesn't really matter. Just understand that when you go to the store, it's going to look a lot worse. Now, what can we do about it collectively? Like I said, I harken back to thinking about what happened during the Great Depression, how people handled themselves. People are going to be cooking home a lot more, and this, quite frankly, might be the death knell of a lot of the fast food and restaurant industries.
Wow.
A lot of people are gonna lose jobs too because of that.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And the fact that Carney is openly talking about UBI, obviously the guy is smart enough to understand that that's literally the point that we're at in our socioeconomic kind of state here in North America. If he understands that we are pricing ourselves out of the average person being able to even afford food, he knows what's up.
Can I address a comment in real quickly here, Radical?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, someone asked me which. Oh god, the comments keep going faster and faster here. Okay, so someone asked me what is my source for Trump being released. Okay, let's see. 1978, he got taken to court and he was caught. He was guilty of not renting to people of color because that is a racist thing to do. You cannot be judging someone or renting to someone based off the skin color. 1989, he decided to put out a $80,000 ad to call for the execution of 5 young black men because they were charged, um, falsely charged and put in jail because of something they did not do. There's a 1994 case where he took indigenous people to court because they weren't quote unquote Indian enough looking to him. Um, there is the fact that he started that whole fight with that whole hate brawl with the Haitians in Ohio, Springfield, Ohio. There was the fact that there's so many things he's done wrong, like telling people that they're eating the cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, and talking about Mexican people and calling them rapists and substance dealers and gang members and murderers and stuff like that. That's all stuff that you can Google, my dude. So if you don't believe that, I don't know what to tell you. He is a blatant racist person, and that's actually true. I've seen the cases. I've read the documents. Just take a quick minute, go to Google, type in the search bar, what racist things has Donald Trump done? 78 will come up, 89, 94. There's actually video footage of him saying what he said, and me just reiterating that. So again, I don't know what to tell you, sir, or person. I really don't know what to tell you. That's what I know. So there you go.
Thank you, Smarshy.
Welcome.
Anyone else?
Well, we got to realize that so much of this that we're dealing with, this super tribalistic part of the human species, is because so much of our evolution was based in these small groups. When you saw people coming over the hill, that wasn't the welcome wagon. They were coming to take your shit and probably kill you in the process. So this internalized tribalism is part and parcel of the human being. Now, we are also at the point where we should be evolving ourselves past that point. However, this backlash to it, I remember saying when pretty much the day that Obama started his first term, there is going to be a backlash to this. This is a fundamental shift in the power structure as far as the race is concerned. It happened to be a black person. Now, in our case, we've got Wab Canoe. He's one of the few Indigenous peoples that are in our parliamentary system, and doing a bang up job, Wab. So we're at the point where it's there to pick up in the human species, and when you have someone like Trump come in and say it's okay, this is the end result.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to build on that thought?
Honestly, I feel like we've all been talking about Trump so much. I feel like maybe let's get back to the tariff topic because we still hadn't gone over, like what are we supposed to do now?
Yep.
What can we actually do?
Well, I know when I had talked to you, you had been talking about email campaigns. Is that something that's going to work?
Hmm?
Email
Sorry, you were
campaigns?
kind of.
Am I muffled?
Yeah, you were muffled.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
What do you think we can do?
Well, again, when it comes to the tariffs, we can't really do anything because this has to come down through policy. And that's why it is so crucially important that the conservatives are not the ones in charge of regulating that policy.
I think we're going to deal with a lot of food insecurity now. So people need to really think wisely. We need to, learn to make bread. I was just saying to Radical, it might be worth it to get a food dehydrator for our food to look at wastage. I look back to the days of war when my grandmother and I were talking, and they used to make dandelion wine. And that because she grew up in the Great Depression, right? They What else did they do, Radical? They told us a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, the reality is that for them everything came out of a can. Uh,
Everything.
Protein was a once in a while thing. Fresh vegetables and fresh fruits were not a thing, and we're going to have to go back to sort of a lot of that type of cooking, I think. And like I said, I think a lot of people are just going to end up cooking at home. That's going to be the reality for all of us. But what I will say in preparation of that, the basics of those products, the sugar, the yeast, the flour, if you're going to be stocking up on things, those are the things to kind of start with. Those are going to become scarce.
Sugar, flour, yeast, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Staples.
Got you.
Medical things. So hold on to anything you have. Don't be wasteful about anything.
And the reality is we know that through this entire COVID experience, that there isn't a misfortune in the world today that the business community won't be happy to exploit. So not only are we going to deal with the obvious price increases because of the problem, but they will happily add that little extra on top just because.
Absolutely. So one of the things we've been working on in our house, there's some extra pills that come in my mom's med pack that she doesn't use. We save all of our medications and mark them. We don't give them back to the pharmacy. We buy extra flour every time we go grocery shopping, even if we don't need it. We're not hoarding, but we're trying to be mindful to prepare ourselves. And we're starting to think of like what other people did back in wartime. So go get garden, like go get dirt. Start thinking about what your
There's
garden
a
is gonna
lot
look
there's a
like.
lot of us though that live in apartment buildings in the city, and we do not have the ability to do that. I'm not even allowed to have real plants on my patio.
You know what? I lived in an apartment and I grew lettuce and celery in my apartment. I don't know where your
Whoa.
apartment faces, but other things too, community gardens, work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, community gardens here are about a 4 to 6 year wait
But that's what
to
I'm
get a
saying,
spot.
work together. Like when I'm thinking about planting my garden this summer, I'm I'm going to be thinking about my friends and neighbors. I'm going to be thinking about myself. I'm going to be thinking about my shelter.
Right. And
Right?
here's a tip: if you buy green onion from the store and you cut off the bottom of it, stick it in a jar in the windowsill of your house, and it will regrow, and you'll have more. Just keep doing that.
Yeah,
I have
lettuce.
no direct light. I have no direct light because I have apartment buildings on the other side of the street, and the light only comes in from this way, and I'm facing that way. So I have no direct sunlight.
Maybe we
I've
need to
tried to
keep
grow
chicken.
plants, everything dies. Everything dies.
Oh, okay. I
Right,
was going to
we're
say
gonna
we need
drop.
to
Yeah.
do a grow
I'm
light,
sorry
but
to hear that. We're gonna drop that. So, but uh, it is a subject that is absolutely worth touching on because so many people are in urban environments. So many people are in an urban environment just like Frontline, and this is absolutely going to be a concern to them. How do you deal with food insecurity when you can't grow anything and you don't have some of the options that somebody else does? So I think this is a topic that absolutely needs to be discussed because so many people live under those conditions. A couple of weeks without access to the grocery store and they're fucked. And I don't, unfortunately, I don't, I'm trying to think other than hoarding food maybe in one of the corners of the living room. I wish I had more options for people like Frontline that just that availability of space or whatever is just not there because so many of us, especially urbanites, actually live in apartments and you can't do shit.
one of the things that really impressed me during COVID, and we were stuck in Alberta during our first leg of COVID. Um, People didn't leave their apartments. A lot of people didn't plan on COVID and they didn't have groceries. And we called them like grocery ninjas or something like that. And you put on Facebook, like, I'm stuck, I'm in isolation. And people would show up to your doorstep with groceries. It might not be exactly what you were looking for, but people were like, well, I've got some milk, I've got some eggs, I've got, and people were coming together to do that. And so we might have to think about starting up food co-ops to work together and gardens together, and not community gardens, like friendship, family coming
Yep.
together.
Well, I'm gonna talk to my mom with everything that's going on because she's getting older, right? So we're gonna talk about doing a community garden with us and our family because I know she has the land, I know she has the soil, I have the backyard. I can put a grow up in my basement because my basement's dark enough, right? I can just put up a hydroponic light set. Anything I can do to help my community, I will. Like even at this time, I will. Like it's not a big deal.
100%. Hey, Probable, do you want to come up and visit with us, or do you just want to kind of hang in the box? It's all good.
Chiming in every rare often.
Love it.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
So I think, when the ministers came together for about the tariffs and how they're going to deal with that, I think one of the things that came out of it was more trading deals with China, because like America's our first trading partner, obviously, but China is our second. So the possibility of greatly increasing our trade with China, but I don't know how that would affect like food supply and stuff like that, because I don't think we can get that stuff from China, right?
Well, I think it's going to come down to a lot of this free trade stuff when it comes down to food production. I think is going to start to go out the window as environmental impacts get worse. I think we're going to be forced to do most of our growing in enclosed and temperature controlled environments. How many times can we have thousands of acres of wheat or barley or whatever the hell it is, and you have a single hailstorm go through there and it obliterates the entire area? That's going to happen more frequently. It's going to happen more severely when it does happen. So, all of the complications that we're seeing, I think internalized food production within your country and more specifically within your general region is going to become more and more of a thing. We have a place just outside of our town here. It's kind of a small independent farm that a lot of people use. Some of their stuff is inside and temperature controlled and so on. But I kind of see that as an example of a lot of the things that are going to come. All of this food production is going to have to be decentralized the way that we're doing it right now. I don't think is going to work over the long term.
Thank you. That makes sense.
It's definitely not going to work over the long term, and again, we've seen it in previous pasts that when something like a recession, depression, people have to come and build community structures. That's what gets people through wartime. That's what gets people through crisis, through tragedy, is community structures. So we're going to have to, I think people are going to move more towards co-ops and stuff like that. But it's going to take time, right? Like there's always going to be this horrible adjustment period where a lot of people are going to suffer before we reorganize into a community oriented structure. So that's kind of my prediction for what's to come, but it's going to be chaotic because the only thing that we don't know how we're going to be affected by is the new technology, because that's the only thing in the past that was never there before. So how is all of this new tech going to make a play here? I don't know. It could be it could be really destructive or it could be really helpful depending on who's controlling it.
Yeah, like most things, we won't know the results for about a decade. And
Yeah.
that's so much of the problem with a lot of the things that we do. They're never implemented long enough to see what does it look like over the long term. And I've kind of spoken about this with the problem with the way that our government is structured, is every time a new government comes in, everything that was being worked on gets tossed out the window, and we're in this endless repetitious cycle of starting again.
Yeah. The thing is, though, like, that's the thing. We have the intellect and we have the technologies that can really help us. But those people don't have power, they don't have money, they don't have backing. That's the problem. And we have more than enough money right now in the world to support every single human being, to support us moving to green energy. And of course, it's going to take time. And, I can already hear all the big oil people being like, you can't just cut that off. And it's like, no, it's not like we're going to cut it off right away. It's just moving into building the new infrastructure. And nobody's been allocating a lot of money into building the new infrastructure because oil and gas does not want to lose their profits. So these people could have made this change a long time ago. We could have been building this infrastructure for the past 20 to 30 years. And
Yep.
that's what really grinds my gears so that I don't say any other bad word. But we knew it. We knew it. People were talking about it. Activists have been screaming at the top of their lungs for over 3 decades now.
Right.
And we just didn't listen. We didn't listen and we didn't push hard enough. We didn't get as involved as we needed to be before it got this bad. Because
Right.
now all of us are jumping in and we're all trying to do the work and get there. But realistically, and I'm mad at myself for this, like, I genuinely am so mad at myself that I didn't start this journey much, much earlier in life. Like, I always got involved in, I guess I would call it more mild activism. But when you're younger, you're also scared to show up on camera. You're scared to have a voice. You're scared of what people are going to say about you. It affects you a lot more. But now that I'm older, I just, it kind of rolls off the back. I don't care as much, so I can do this. But I wish that I started this so much earlier. I yeah,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of regret there. I'll be honest.
I could go off what Frontline said. I was talking with a person in the UK, and we were talking about the oh God, what was it? The Queen's jewels and the jewels of the monarchy. If we sold all of those jewels right now, we could feed this entire world 3 times over with all the jewels that they have. And that would stop the poverty. That would do what they need to do. And it's sick that they have this much money sitting there, but they won't do anything about it.
100%. Hey, Radico, do you want to tell them about that space asteroid we were talking about last night?
Well, we were discussing what Generation Next is going to look like, and its fundamental premise is that we need to change the focus of how we view the human species. We are very intent on our tribalism. However, for humanity to actually advance, we need to see ourselves as a global space faring species. The things that we require, the things that we want, the gold, the platinum, the silver, the iron, the lithium, all of these things are available in abundance in our solar systems in quantities that we almost can't comprehend. There is one asteroid out there with enough gold in it that if you were to disseminate it and bring it to Earth, you would literally make gold worthless. There would be so much of it. And so all of these things are out there and they are available. But until we garner the focus to start looking at humanity as a spacefaring species, we're going to continue to get mired in these petty political fights and these disputes over territory and lithium in China and coffee in Brazil and whatever the fuck in wherever else, right? Once you devalue so many of the things that we require, we are either going to devolve into destroying ourselves or we are going to refocus onto something bigger and better. I tend to think that we will focus on something bigger and better, but it ain't going to happen as long as we have sociopaths that control the majority of the wealth on this planet right now.
Yeah, I'll just add a little blip here. I don't even know if it's, you know what, I'll mention it. I don't care if I sound woohoo, but can you guys just imagine like all of the spiritual leaders and gurus that have talked about loving each other, coming together, viewing everybody as equal, loving everybody, because that is the only way to move forward. And they were saying this like in the future, this is going to be more and more and more important for the human race is that we come together, we unite, and we look at each other with love in our hearts. And I bet you they're all just rolling in their graves right now.
Definitely.
I just have to say that because I've listened to when I was in my 20s. I was very much into philosophy and spirituality, but not from a religious perspective, from just understanding the spiritual principles. And I really thought when I was younger that the world was going to go in such a better direction. I saw so many people coming together based on these spiritual principles, and then capitalism took over that part of the community as well. And it just makes me shake my head every time because I'm like, what? How? This sucks. This sucks. Like these people that have dedicated their entire lives to teaching us this are probably looking down going, what is going on?
Yeah, and I mean, I've used the example on a few different occasions. I mean, this is the generation of the Large Hadron Collider. This is the generation of the James Webb Telescope. This is the generation of having mapped out the human genome, and yet our politics and our society are still so based on these platforms that came from thousands of years ago and don't particularly have a relevance in the world today, but we refuse to move on beyond it. I've said often enough that humanity as a species is at about grade 3. We're easily manipulated. We don't have a lot of focus. We don't have a lot of knowledge of the actual world around us. We can get pushed around. We're not really too sure of ourselves, and we certainly don't have a damn direction. No, I think I lost everybody's sound again.
No, we were
Yep.
just
Now
listening.
you're back.
It was good. We loved it.
I think we were all just in deep thought about how right you are. And just, it's hard sometimes to not feel defeated, but we have to keep pressing forward and we have to live with hope in our hearts because if we don't, then what's the point?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at some hydroponic lights and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. The reality is that whatever our political differences, conservatives and Republicans and liberals and leftists, on a personal level, we are all after the same thing. But the reality of the question is what do those kind of same things look like when you move just slightly beyond it? Because now it starts to look incredibly different. With the left perspective and the right perspective, at the end of the day, we all want to be fed. We'd like a nice home. We'd like to be able to go and do our things without being interfered with. Like on a general level, all of our wants and needs are relatively the same, whether it's here or in Pakistan or Germany, Russia, does not matter. The human basic wants are all the same. It's once you get past the needs, that's where the problem lies, because then the want stream comes in. And what we're finding with the human species is that the wants often override even the needs. It's one of the weird things about that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It doesn't actually go very well, because once your basic needs are taken care of, that's terrific, and then you can move on to some other religious, societal, and all of these different avenues. But the trouble is that 2 or 3 of those avenues can change and alter the pyramid so drastically that even basic needs go out the window.
Yeah, agreed.
You keep
And go ahead.
I was going to say, you keep leaving us speechless, Radical.
And my aunties are teaching me how to garden, so my indigenous aunties are teaching me to plant where my ancestors. It's
You
gonna
got
be
some background noise, Marsh. I don't know if it's you. Oh, there it is. Thanks, Marsh.
yeah. Is that better?
Yeah,
It
there
is.
you are.
Yeah. Okay. I had my phone speaker in my bed. Um. Yeah. So I'm learning about how to grow vegetables and all that stuff, and make it through this 4 years of whatever we're going through, right?
I think of being there together. I think something that's worked for the Radicals is we all came together as a family and we're all working together to work on food, money, housing, all of those things as a large group. And we just might even have to get more tribal that way and work together with your communities. And if you have more, you should share more.
Well, I think the that family structure that North America has kind of had for so long. Um, I think we need to harken back a little bit more to it. Now, I'm all about pushing the independence of your children. It was a mantra of our Miss Radical and I's parenting philosophy is fostering that independence of thought and motivation. But the financial situations for the under 30 somethings nowadays are nothing like the financial restraints that we were under. We had it difficult. They have it damn near impossible.
Yes.
I think that we have to go back so much more to look at some of the other cultures where they have 20 people in two homes. Everybody contributes something toward the general health of the population in those homes, and then you have your money on your own. But there's always a focused and geared concerted effort that the basic needs are met by the group, and then beyond that, you're kind of on your own. And I think a lot of North American families have to go back to that type of thinking where multiple generations of family are supporting each other.
And it can work, right? In a lot of different cultures and in a lot of different places it works. And if you don't have a family, maybe you have to kind of create that family within and build that up with the people that are close to you, that community co-op style.
I mean, that's what a lot of people in the cities are going to have to do because a lot of people that live in cities are very, they live in a very kind of individualistic world. Um, you know, I'm just going to be brutally honest. People that live in the cities are also families that end up having less children, right? I'm an only child. I don't have a brother or sister. Like our family is very, very small. Um, and I know a lot of my friends also have a pretty small family in comparison to some of the more rural families where you get to have the bigger houses and fit more people in them. But in the city, you have these like little townhomes. They're not necessarily a house that can fit 10 people, not even 8 people. They're like 4 house, 5 house max type of houses. So people in the cities are definitely going to have to build communities with each other because a lot of them just don't have that kind of extended family. Also, when you think about immigrants, right? How many Canadian citizens are actually immigrants that came here in the last 20 to 30 years? A lot of them leave their families behind, right? So when they're here, they're here with like, 3, 4 other members of their family, and then that's it. They don't have their aunties and their uncles and everybody else because everybody else is back home. So those people really need to come together and build communities because otherwise it's, as I said, right, it's just not going to happen. So people in the
I
cities
actually
are going to
submit
have to
to
come
you.
together locally.
I submit to you that it's probably easier for them to create a community with their own. When they get to places, that's the first thing they do is reach out to their own and start building those communities. When we bought our house, so my house I bought big for our whole family, so I shouldn't say we all collectively bought it together. 7 people in my house. I will tell you that there were some people that were not from Canada living there here, and they managed to put 15 people in this house.
It depends on where they're coming from.
I
It
agree,
depends on the culture.
but
Because
I guess
there's a lot of people that come here without a basis that was already here, whereas there's, some big populations that have been here for a while. They have a lot of people here. They get to know each other because they have shared religion, shared culture. But there's a lot of people from Europe, for example, that come here without that.
100%.
They come here, knowing English,
Mhm.
but not really having a setup or anything like that. So
100%.
again, it's going to be a cultural difference, obviously. But I'm saying there's a lot of people in the cities in that boat.
Yeah.
And it shows the importance of a platform like the Clock app here, where I can connect with somebody in Vancouver, and I can connect with somebody in Toronto, and I can connect with somebody in Halifax, and that comparative. What are you doing over there? What are we doing over here? And comparing those lines of information is so important because, as Frontline pointed out, the city structure is often detrimental in and of itself to connecting with other people or managing resources. So how do we overcome that where, roughly 60% of our population resides in about half a dozen different centers here in Canada?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot that we're going to have to learn about dealing with each other in the next decade, if we're going to make it.
Yep. And it's going to push everybody's comfort levels to their extreme. But I also think, and something that when I run my show here is, I want to talk, like I said, about changing people's perspective on how we look at humanity and how we conduct ourselves. Because at this point here, what we are doing does not work.
Yeah, agreed.
That's the damn bottom line. So it's 7:27. So we're gonna get ready to wrap it up here. So I just want to throw it out there for anybody's final thoughts on any of the discussion today or anything else. For myself, like I said, I wanted to everybody who's here and tuned into the show. Thanks for coming in. We are we're Thursday night staple. However, we are gearing the platform that Beaver Politics will be on every night with a different host, a different perspective, and a different topic.
Anybody have some final thoughts? Thank you, Radical.
I just want everybody to stay safe where they are, stay warm, stay fed, stay blessed. And just remember, we're all in this together, so you're not alone. Yes, we're not alone. We're all with everybody. So thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Smarsh.
Thank you.
Frontline or Probable Falls?
Yeah, no, echoing Smarsh, but thank you for having me. It was great conversation. Thanks. And I know I didn't say much. I was quite nervous, but hopefully next time I'll be more talkative.
We just
Thank
appreciate
you.
you joining us. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah,
Frontline?
and I'll just finish off with doing a quick little recap. On Monday nights, we're going to have Indigenous Matters. Tuesday nights is going to be News Hour with me. Wednesday nights is going to be Generation Next, which, if you've been listening for the last 5 minutes, that's really what it's going to be based around, what Radical said. Thursday nights, we're going to have this. We're going to keep this going for forever until they take the Clock app away from us. And then on Fridays, we're going to have Debate Central, where we can hopefully have some disciplined and kind, rational debates with kind, rational opposition.
We're excited. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate everybody who stuck around. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for the shares. We really appreciate all of you.
Frontline, our love. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Falls,
Have a
thank
good
you,
night, guys.
everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.